Welcome back, Irish fans, to Breaking Down Bray's Boys podcast. Today we have another big interview with Notre Dame legend, radio broadcaster, and host of the Mike Brey radio show, Mr. Jack Nolan. Thank you for hopping on with us, and we're looking forward to it.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you for asking me.
So we'll just get into the questions to start out. So first, can you tell us your story on how you got into broadcasting and all that?
This is what I always wanted to do at an early age. When I go all the way back to the beginning, I remember in, I think it's first grade, the reading book was See Tip Run. When they asked me to read out of the book, I enjoyed it. And I was a big sports fan. I'm from Boston. Grew up a big fan of all Boston teams, probably started with the Red Sox. I might have played hockey, had a full Bruins uniform. When I was growing up, late 60s, early 70s, the Bruins would sell out in the 16 league where they finished last, and the Celtics would have trouble selling out winning titles. But hockey practice for Pee-wees was at 4 a.m. on Sunday, and my dad told me he loved me, but not that much. So switched to basketball at that point. I started bringing – well, I used to stay home Friday nights, which shows you what a social maven I was. I would listen to a guy named Johnny Most, the voice of the Boston Celtics at a time when, only like half the games were on TV. I'd keep score. Then I started bringing tape recorders to Fenway Park and Boston Garden and just announced the games of my own. My high school had a radio station. I didn't get to do basketball because I played it. I did get to do football. Then I went to the University of Missouri. Ended up being the sports director of the student station KCOU, where I did football, basketball, and baseball. Basketball, I would sit here, and Bob Costas, who was not much older than me, was doing the games as a 21, 22-year-old broadcaster for KMOX. I also became the 6 o'clock sports anchor of the NBC station in town, which, much like Notre Dame's used to be, WNDU was owned by the university, but the students did the news, commercial station. Went on to CNN, and I was 22, and I got a call, would you like to do Notre Dame football on TV and basketball on the radio? And I said, let me think. Yes, I would. And got the job. Did do the games on WNDU from 82 until 90 on TV for football, and I've been doing basketball on TV and radio since 1982.
Wow, that's a long time. And you had it pretty
it is.
You had it pretty good as a Boston sports fan. You still root for all those teams?
Yeah, you get it gets into your blood. There's no question about it. And I wasn't that big a Patriots fan at the time. The Patriots weren't that good. In fact, they were bad other than, 75. No, 84. I'm sorry. 84, they got to the Super Bowl. But other than that, they were not, until Tom Brady showed up, they were not good. But, yeah, still dyed-in-the-wool Celtics, pay for the extra innings package every year so I can watch the Red Sox. You're inoculated with Red Sox fandom right from the beginning.
Yeah, that was the one year the Patriots were good. They lost to my Bears, the only Super Bowl in recent.
Yeah, with the fridge. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
All too well.
Jake, and you can go ahead now.
Sorry. Do you remember where you were when you first met Mike Brey, and what was it like?
It was at his press conference, I think in July of 2000. And he seemed like a great guy, and it turned out that he is a great guy. I thought he was a good fit. I mean, every coach here has been great to me. Digger is still a friend. Digger can be a handful at times, but he's still a friend. McLeod was great. Matt Doherty, the 1 year that he was here, was great. But Mike Brey is one of the best human beings I've ever been around, and I've certainly been blessed to have been able to do all 20 years of his games and host his TV and radio shows. But the guy, he's just a guy you want to have a beer with, or something stronger, or wine, or whatever. But he's a really good guy, very humble for someone with all of his success. Players like to play for him. You just like to be part of his staff in some way.
Yeah, I mean, like, me and Joey, at least, we've only seen, like, Mike Brey as the coach of the Irish since we were born. We were born in 2000. So, but he seems like a really great guy. I mean, I haven't got the chance to meet him yet, but he seems awesome.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, before we started chartering, about half our flights were through commercial airports, and people would come up to say hello. He's always got time, but even just fans. I mean, sometimes the custodians would go by and say, "Hey, aren't you coach of Notre Dame?" And Mike could pull him aside and talk to him for 10 minutes. And he's genuinely interested in people. A lot of people will pay lip service, but not him. He's just a good dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah, when I met him at Clemson the same night I met you, he was awesome. Same thing with Georgia Tech. Awesome guy.
He is. We did our own little podcast. I don't know how they're going to use my portion of it on the 5 overtime Louisville game, but that's kind of how he got his reputation as loosest coach in America. But I can tell you, behind the scenes, I've seen him break whiteboards. Nobody gets more uptight than he does before games. But his goal is to keep his team loose. And if you ever get a chance to at least watch the highlights of that game, and there's a lot of it out there, he's so loose and having fun in the huddles, and Rick Pitino looks like he's going to blow a gasket the whole time. The fact that he kept Notre Dame calm is how the Irish ended up winning that game with a guy who hadn't played in 4 of the last 5 in the last 2 games, Garrick Sherman, ending up scoring 17 points in overtime to help him win it.
Wow. All right, so I mean, pretty much everyone that watches ND basketball knows about like the iconic like "got it" from you every time we hit a 3. So we were kind of just thinking like, where did that come from? Was that like thought out, or that was like something that just happened?
It's organic. When I was growing up, the 2 lead announcers in the Northeast, Marv Albert, which was yes, and Johnny Most, bang. And I used bang a little bit. Everybody thinks you need to have a tagline. I never intentionally meant to do it. Lots of people use got it. I used to use bang. One time when I was doing the games near Costas, I said bang before he did it. He kind of pointed at me like, you got me there. But I stopped. I don't know why I stopped using bang, and I just started using got it. And I didn't realize when got it became got it. If you know where I'm getting here. They were nice enough to give me an honorary monogram 6-7 years ago now. And they played a tribute video. And some of the highlights were me calling games on TV, games that LaFonso Ellis played in and whatnot. And I was using got it then. But it kind of transpired. I have a journalism degree from the University of Missouri. And you always felt you're a journalist. You have to be somewhat objective and separate. And I kind of controlled the emotion to a degree. And sportscasting has changed a bit as well. Gus Johnson now is made going nuts. Okay, on national TV when you're doing 2 teams you're supposed to be neutral about. As I became closer to the team, and Notre Dame, I try not to say we. I think maybe I said we once in 38 years, maybe twice, because I'm part of the family. They make you feel that way. I am part of the basketball family, but I'm not on the team in that I never have an impact on wins and losses. But as I became, tighter and tighter with the team and kind of let my emotions go more and more, I started to just let it rip. And then one night I went just crazy. I can't remember which one, just, got it. I made it a 6-syllable phrase. And people loved it. Most people loved it. One of the things I did have to adjust to, I've also come up in the age of social media. When I started, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook. You might get an email, and you discover that you're never going to please everybody. And there's now they're called trolls. There are people out there who live just to rip people. And you would read some stuff, and I'd go, man. Or one guy said, every time he says "got it," I want to throat punch him. And I'm thinking, is it that bad? Should I stop doing it? And you really think about it a little bit, and then you notice these are just people that like to rip people. The vast majority of the people love it. Fans love it. Players love it. Jack Cooley against Evansville, either his junior or senior year, gets the ball at the top of the key. And Evansville, he didn't shoot threes. And I called it. They give the ball to Cooley, top of the key. He looks to his left, looks to his right, looks for a pass. They back off him. They dare him to shoot it. He shoots it, and he makes it for a 3. At the end of the game, the only time this has ever happened, like 2 minutes left, he's walking over to the radio table, and the Irish are up, I think, by 15 or 20, and he's talking. I said, what? He goes, did I get it? Got it. Yeah, you got it. And then after the game, coming over to him, he goes, "Oh no, I didn't get a got it, did I?" I said, "Jack, don't worry about it. I did it even better. It was more descriptive. It was unique. You'll get a got it next time." And he goes, "I'm the center. You're going to be in next time." So even the players will go, "Did we got it?" So they'll play it on the bus and stuff. It's become something that everybody enjoys. And now I do throw them in. I used to never think about it. There was like a half. I would not say got it. I wouldn't get a tweet or a text. What, was that half not good enough for a got it? So now people are measuring the level of plays as to whether I use got it's or not. That's become inadvertently and organically my stamp of this is a big basket. But there's degrees of got it's. There's early got it's. Atkins for three, got it. And then there's got it. So it just depends on what the emotion is, how much is left, how important the basket is, how difficult the shot is. But it's not something I ever planned. It's just kind of grown, and I'm actually kind of surprised. And I know, embrace it. There are folks that don't like it, and I get that. If I get a real thing, some people don't think you should be screaming and yelling. Other people say, "I just want the X's and O's. I just want the score." I said, "Well, then dial it up on the computer and watch the screen." If you're listening to the radio, I want you to do a couple things. I want to paint the picture in your mind that you can close your eyes, know exactly where the ball is. Don't want to miss anything. I want to have a level of excitement, almost to make you think, and not in a way that's not true, but just that I want you to think, boy, I wish I was in the arena, because this is a really fun game. Just the intensity of the game going up and down. I'd like to say I'm subjectively objective. I'm always going to tell you the truth. If Notre Dame's not playing, I'm going to say, boy, tough night for the Irish. But I'm never going to kill a college athlete who's not playing well. And the other thing is, I want you to have fun. And now I want to have fun. I know all these folks. I know the players. I know their parents. I know the coaches. I know the kids. So I want them to win, because I'm part of their family. They're part of my family. So I think, and this is what I think people want in a radio announcer. If you're going to listen to a game on the radio, you're a fan. You really want to know what's going on. And I think people, and I've had people tell me this now, and then this year fewer games were on TV. I had a staffer, one of the administrative assistants, said, "I was standing on my bed last night in the overtime, and I was jumping up and down with you. I was having trouble breathing through all of those segments, and every shot I was living and dying." They like listening to somebody who feels exactly like they do, who is living and dying with every shot and every pass, just like they are. And that's what I try to do now.
Yeah. And
I feel. Yeah, I feel like that too. It's like, go back to the UNC game. That was like, it's so fun. It's like, I guess that's kind of like what being a fan of sports is all about. You live for those moments, and they give you great joy. And it's like, the losses suck, but that's what makes the wins so great to enjoy, really.
No, that's absolutely true. You look at the UNC game, it's still Carolina. They're the best team with a losing record I've ever seen. And it was just such a dramatic game. And there are certain teams, and it's like Notre Dame, USC in football. Really doesn't matter what the records are. It's still Notre Dame and USC. And of course, North Carolina still had two McDonald's All-Americans. Notre Dame didn't have any. So it was an emotional game. It was home, and it's a chance to beat Carolina. I never thought. I almost teared up in the post game of the championship game against Carolina in the ACC tournament, because I never thought Notre Dame was going to win the ACC tournament, win it the second year they're there, and do it in Carolina, beating Duke in Carolina. That's not a neutral court, folks. It was just a monumental accomplishment. And yeah, those are the kind of things that you live for.
So, did you play any sports as a kid? I know you mentioned hockey and basketball, but did you play anything else that kind of just influenced you getting into sports broadcasting?
Well, I played hockey on ponds and rinks. I never played organized hockey. Played baseball from Little League until played it through what was called Senior League, which was high school age. My actual high school career ended before it began because I couldn't hit a curveball. But played a lot of years of baseball. And then I played basketball from the time I was 10 or 11 till I went to college. Just wasn't good enough. When I was on a very good high school team, didn't get to play that much because our center went to Harvard. Our point guard went to Harvard and started. Our power forward went to BU, and our small forward went to BC. And for one school to have 4 Division I scholarship guys on it, I was the backup team in JV center. I'm only 6'1", and I was a great 3-point shooter, except there wasn't a 3-point shot when I was playing. So coach always thought I was trying to get out of playing defense. It wasn't attacking the basket, taking those shots. But I played a lot of basketball. Really enjoyed it.
Like, I mean, I know me and Joey, we both play like not like super competitive basketball. We play like rec league basketball, but just gets us like even more interested in the game and like watching college sports as well. So it just like really helps.
Well, there was no AAU then, but I mean, I played it all the time. Played at CYO, which was, so you played high school, junior high, CYO, played on travel teams in the summer. So it's what I really played. And this is, it becomes obvious at a certain point, you're not going to play anymore. So this is as close to playing as I could still get, as close to taking part as you can get if you're not actually playing. Because if you're announcing for a team, you do feel the wins and losses. And also, if you've nailed the game or not nailed the game. So if your team wins and you've called it well, that is a pretty good feeling.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point. And so, I mean, I know some people that follow us and stuff like that are like wanting to try to get into sports broadcasting. So what advice would you give to some people like us at a young age to try to help us start it up?
Well, first I'm going to tell you it's tough. There is no one who has gotten to a certain level without having some breaks and having someone help them. Very hard to do it by yourself. I remember one night I was driving in it was early 2000s from here down to Miami of Ohio. We played a 4-game home-and-home series in basketball with Miami. And I was listening. I had to do it on a Friday night because I had TV news responsibilities that day and I couldn't go with the team. And I listened to 3 different high school broadcasts on the way down, and everybody was great. One was a grizzled old guy who probably turned the station on in the morning and sold all the commercials. And 2 other guys, and I thought, boy, these guys are really good. So there aren't a lot of people who can do it well, but there's probably more people than there are really good jobs. So I would, caution folks, don't do it because you want to get rich or famous. Do it because you love it. That would be the first step. And then do whatever you can to get experience. High school stations, volunteer at stations just to get in. Call games into a tape recorder. I still have my tape of the 1975 Celtics Suns triple overtime cassette game that I did the night before my SATs, which my folks were not happy about because I got home at 3 a.m. The SAT started at 8. So probably wouldn't have had SATs strong enough after that to get into Notre Dame. But I mean, whatever opportunity that you have to try to do the games, do them. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. Just announcing is hard. The guy that did the Patriots game, Gil Santos, for years and years and years, also was the drive time morning sportscaster for WBZ in Boston. The games were kind of like a sidelight. The way he made his money was getting up every day at 4 a.m. and doing the sports from 5 to 9 every single day. It's a grind. So understand that it's a tough way to make a living, but and like now when I'm trapped at home doing Zoom calls from 9 to 5, and the few times I have to sit in the office for more than 4 hours at a time, I go nuts. So it's a heck of a way to make a living. So I would take every opportunity you possibly can. And again, I was lucky there was high school radio station in South Bend has a broadcast program for the entire series of high schools, of which there are 4 of them. But any opportunity you can get to do that. I was a DJ, try to do that. Anything where you can get on the air is very, very helpful. And just try to do every opportunity that you get. And baseball, Mike Monacle started single A baseball in the Cape Cod League. He's a recent Notre Dame graduate who's now working for the ACC network. Any opportunity where you can get to actually do it. As you get higher, it actually gets easier because the higher you get, the more help you get. Game notes and network people have researchers. When you are just starting out, you have to do all the research yourself. But it's still radio in particular. Radio is you, the microphone, and the audience. And that's the same at any level. television now is a whole different animal, and ESPN's philosophy of games as opportunities to tell stories while the action goes on behind, that's much more complicated. And in TV, there's so many people involved. If any one of them, if the camera guy misses a shot, if they switch it wrong, if the graphics are wrong, a lot of people determine whether or not the broadcast is flawless. But the great thing about the purity of radio is it's you and the microphone and your partner and how you work together. But you guys determine the quality of the broadcast. There's very little outside influence outside of the people at the broadcast table who have an impact on whether the call is good or not.
Yeah. And like, I feel the motivation for me especially is just because like, I know I'm not gonna be able to play like college basketball or something like that. So I just want to be like closest to like the team as possible, like and closest to the game. That's so something like a motivation for us.
So Luke, where do you go?
For high school?
Yeah.
I go to St. Ignatius in Chicago.
Okay, and where do you want to go to college?
Notre Dame.
Okay, well, good luck. If you get down here, there's a student radio station and there's Fighting Irish Media. And so come to that first Fighting Irish Media game. And in most cases, you don't get right on the air right away, but you will be switching and editing and shooting, and you may quickly get on the air. And it's remarkable the amount of talent that we have already run through here that have gone on to get jobs announcing games. So if you get down here, take advantage of every opportunity you have.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, Luke, don't get any ideas. I think we might have to lock you up for a contract before you get there, so you don't go.
Right.
So I know so when we were at Clemson, I saw you get onto the team bus, and you were talking about how you were talking to Cooley and all them. What's your relationship like with all the players?
It's pretty good. Originally, I would fly with the team. Well, I've been traveling with them forever. But a lot of it was commercial. And again, there was that, I think if there was one thing that was drilled into me at Mizzou was about being an objective journalist and not getting too close. But I would do that differently. I mean, I'm sure you guys have all been watching The Last Dance. You know, when Ahmad Rashad would get all these interviews with Michael Jordan, well, heck, he was sleeping at his house. Of course he's getting interviews with him. So I think there's a happy medium there. And I think you can be friends with people and still be objective. But right now, I mean, the relationship's pretty close. You have to keep some distance and give them their space and then your space. And in all honesty now, I'm older at this point than a lot of their dads. So it may be a little different than it was before. But being with them, I'm considered part of the group. And they'll joke with me and I will joke with them. Or after a buzzer beater, I'll walk onto the bus and all y'all got it at me. Or I'll hear him in the back kind of joking, or hey, do you think you got it? Hey, you missed that. Otherwise, you would have got it. But I mean, I really got to know Rex Pfluger. I got to know the Moonies. I got really close with Matt Farrell and his folks. I've gotten to know the parents a little bit more of late. And one of the things in 2006, I came over to work at Notre Dame Sports Properties, and 7 years ago, I became full-time with the university. The thing is, I used to always have to do some kind of a news job. First, sportscasting. I did a lot of news anchoring for WNDU as well, a lot of times in the morning. So I got done with the game, and I had to get home and get rested because I had a full work day the next day. Not that I don't now, but I have more freedom to go out after games. And there was one parent of players a few years ago that said, hey, come on out. There's one night. I went out one night. Suddenly I was part of the club. So I really got to know a lot about the families and the players and whatnot then. So you do get pretty close. And again, they treat me like part of the team, and that is nice. And it makes it easier to do all the prep work that you still have to do. And the longer you do this, there's shortcuts you can do that the folks at home never know what you didn't say. I mean, as long as you know the names and the numbers, those little stories, your background, if you don't say it, they don't say, well, why didn't he say that? Because the folks at home don't know it either. But I still I still over prep, maybe not as much as I used to, because radio is a what medium? It's a description medium. TV is a why and a storytelling medium. But I still probably prep like I'm doing it on TV, and I use maybe 20%, 30% of what I've gone over going in because I'm describing it. And even on TV, if in a good game, you'll use half of it. But you have to be prepared for every situation that might come up. and it's live TV. It's one of the reasons why it's generally during football season, at least half of the top rated programs in the country in a given week from a live audience, it's football or sports, because of the one thing nobody knows what the ending is. And it's live, and it's not, I mean, you can watch a drama, you can DVR it and watch it later as long as nobody leaks to you what the latest Game of Thrones has turned out. And even then you can still watch it. But somebody leaks to you how the game came out, it just will never have the same emotion or interest as it does watching it or listening to it live. And so the announcer has to be prepared for whatever might happen during the course of that game. So you got to do the preparation. And again, having a vested emotional interest at this point in my life makes it easier to do that job, because I really care who wins or loses.
Yeah, it's got to be tough to balance all that. Especially, it's hard for me, especially with Rex. Like, I can't criticize the guy. I like the guy so much. My favorite player of all time. How do you balance that?
I will say you can't do that, or you got to make that layup, or they're not playing very, very well, or I'll even say that's not a smart play. But you do it with a positivity about it. And you guys may be too young to know this, but people will always ask me, who my favorite announcers are. And there's a number of them. But, I mean, in terms of someone to emulate, it was a guy named Dick Enberg. And, again, you'd probably have to go online to see him. But he was NBC's superstar announcer for years and years, worked at CBS at the end of his career. But he was always positive. Everything was positive. Never really said much negative about anybody. And we're in a society now where people just love to rip people. If you lose a game, you've let down the fans and you blew it, you're a bum, you're an idiot, you're other things I won't even say on a podcast. I assume you'll have your parents and friends watching this, but you can be honest without being negative. When Rex wasn't shooting well, I'll say, Rex, you got to make that shot, or Rex probably shouldn't take that shot. But I mean, that's I'm subjectively objective. I'm always going to be honest, but there's just no need to rip someone or to reinforce the fact that someone's not playing well, because every fan knows that team is not playing well. So be truthful, but you don't have to say that this guy sucks, or he stinks, or he's a bum, or he choked, or get him out of there. He should never play again. And then what really gets me mad is when people say so-and-so's garbage. Don't call another human being garbage. I don't care what they've done. I mean, if they haven't committed murder or something, I mean, and we seem to have okayed people anonymously saying things like that. And now we're getting into the Twitterverse a little bit as well. And people normally do it about people they haven't met. Very hard to say that about people you've met. These athletes work so hard to take the floor, especially collegiate athletes who are pursuing legitimate academic degrees. No one ever shows up on a given night and shows up going, I'm not going to play hard tonight, or I'm not going to try tonight, or I'm going to, come out flat. This thing that they were flat. They may have been lacking in energy, but nobody comes out not caring. They've worked as hard as they can, and sometimes the other night, the other team's just better, or you have an off night. So I think the bigger fight is when the team's not playing well. Don't overly sugarcoat it, because sports fans are smart, and they do want you to be honest. Some want you to be negative. People that really root for sports, and sports really helps people's lives. They may have a bad day. The only joy that some folks get on a given day might be if their team wins. And then there's the other aspect of more and more people are betting. So now you're losing money, and that adds a different aspect to it. I mean, we always used to laugh in New York. Now it happens everywhere. A 15-point game, and somebody cheers that last basket because they covered the spread. And that's something that for years we're told on the collegiate broadcast not to mention, because the NCAA, that's against the rules. I can't even buy a square in a betting board at the local bar at my friend's house, because that's considered gambling under NCAA rules. And I'm associated with Notre Dame. But people take out their frustrations on athletes that don't come through the way they want them to. And then they enjoy hearing the announcers rip them because it makes them feel better. And I think you can be honest without doing that. And I've always tried not to do that. I even try to do that with officials. There was one call this year which I called the worst call in the history of basketball, and I will stay with it. But even the officials, do a remarkably good job and probably deserve more respect than fans are willing to give them. But they're very well compensated, and they know what they're signing up for.
Was that the? I'm wondering, was that the call at was like at the Toledo game where they I think it was John Mooney got called for like a charge or something like that. Was that the call that you didn't like?
It was Gibbs. That was the game, and it was Gibbs.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't remember.
The player ran into Gibbs at the end, close to the end.
Bad.
Unfortunately, this year there were a number of calls that fell in that category. There were a few at the Florida State game as well. Officials are human as well.
Yeah, I was watching the Florida State game on like a bus coming back from DC, and like I was so mad at the end of that game.
Well, I mean, it was really this is probably the most heartbreaking year from a perspective of being so close and playing so well and just not having a whole lot to show for it. I mean, I honestly think, and I know nobody cares anymore, but I think this team could have made a run in the NIT. And I think it would have been a nice way for these guys. They still wanted to play. 2 years ago, they really didn't want to play anymore when Bonzi got hurt during most of the season. They got hurt again in the NIT game, but they weren't all that enthused about it because of the success they'd had. But I think this team would have come together, and you know what? Going to New York and putting up a banner and being the first Notre Dame team to win that tournament would have been a nice send-off to a really good senior class. Now, it was so odd. The team was actually on its way to practice for the quarterfinal ACC tournament game that night when the bus got turned around because the ACC canceled the season. And somebody even said, I'm not so sure we want to go to New York. And in hindsight, no truer words were ever said. You didn't want to be in New York at the end of March, early April this year.
Yeah, like, I mean, even in the ACC tournament, I felt like we could have just I felt like we could actually had a chance to beat Virginia, even though they're on like a little bit of a streak. But like Notre Dame, we were really hot going into that game.
We should have beaten Virginia. They played Virginia better. Oh, no, there's no question. I mean, I thought they were going to win that game. And I thought they could have made a run. Their biggest problem was probably not having enough depth to win that many games in that many days.
Yeah.
But, all right. You know, when's the last time you could say that you ended the season with a win?
True. That's a good way to end it.
Yeah.
So, Jake, go ahead.
Okay. What goes well? First, I want to say I agree. I would have loved to have made an NIT run. I think that would have been great. Not only if we could have won it to send off the seniors, but to give especially the 2018 class, some postseason experience, because now that they're gone, only one player at Notre Dame has played a postseason game for them, and that's Jogo. So I think that would have been a cool experience to have. Obviously, there were more important things at hand, but I want to first agree with that. And I'm going to move on to the question, which is, before a game, what preparation goes into it so that you're sharp and you know what you're calling to the best of your abilities? What goes?
For the first thing I do is put my charts together, and I now have a computer program that LaFonso Ellis let me know about, which I subscribe to and fills in all the stats. I used to do that by hand. If you do it by hand, to do my spotting charts with stats probably takes 2.5 to 4 hours, depending on how many notes I'm putting in there. I still type in notes, read both sets of game notes. That's probably a couple of hours there. Go to at least one and usually two practices before the game. Notre Dame practices. Visiting teams don't want the visiting team's radio announcer at their practice. If you're doing a TV game for a regional network, which I've done a few times, you go to both practices. And I try to watch at least one entire game of the opponent. Now I watch at least a complete half. The most important thing for me for radio is recognizing the players for basketball. For football, you got to know the numbers and you have a spotter. For basketball, I mean, there are times people ask me what a Notre Dame player's number is, and I have trouble thinking of it. And they say, what's wrong with you? You're the Notre Dame announcer. You don't know the numbers? It's like, no, I know what they look like. I don't need a number. I know what they look like. But you need to know what the other team's names are, numbers are, pronunciations. we went through a period of time when we were streaming all the games, especially in the non-conference games, and we were streaming video, and they were using my call. So, and if it's a smaller school out east, Sacred Heart, something like that, you know, their whole fan base is watching it online. And so I felt that I've always felt this, whether they're going to hear it or not, but there was pressure to make sure you pronounced all the names of the guys in the other team correctly. And I've done it through women's games as well, the women on the other team, because everybody deserves to have their name pronounced correctly. So you have to work on the pronunciations. And the non-conference games are usually harder than the conference games because you have no history. And then I am looking for some stories and whatnot that I can weave into the game, and also take a good look at the scouting report. And now the team lets me have access to their scouting reports. And on the road, traveling with them, I usually sit on the film session. So now, even having streamlined it, there's probably a minimum, and I go to the game day shoot around. That's when we do coach's interview for the pregame show. There's 6 to 8 hours in each radio game minimum, and you can do more for a TV game. Now, the network guys just have to be able to turn it around quicker, and they have some producer assistance as well. But I think for your average game, you can probably be adequately prepared 4 hours once you know what you're doing. But, you know, the outlier is 8 hours. If there are some extenuating circumstances. But if you add up everything, going to the shoot around, going to the practices, going back and forth, it's 6 to 8 hours of work for each game.
Wow.
Now, it's better when you're in the old days when it's conference and you play a team the second time. I always love it when we have repeat opponents because it's like already knowing the answers to the test. That means I'm just going over some charts again. I'm updating the stats, and with the computer is taken. The computer program, which goes online and puts the stats in, that's taken 2 hours away each time. It's just wonderful. And I don't mind doing the stats when it's January, February, but in November, when I'm traveling to football games, doing Coach Kelly's radio show, doing basketball games, doing the TV show, and that changed a couple of years ago. I was always the in-studio host for football. Now we've been doing the interview on site after the game, so I've had a little less preparation to do there. But you're just so busy. I mean, there are weeks I've had 4 and 5 shows. I have a show every night. Not having to spend 2 hours writing stats has been a huge help. That's one of the great things about technology.
All right, so my last question is, what was, in all your years at Notre Dame, what would you consider the craziest or most interesting story or event that you were a part of, you saw?
Well, the craziest, most challenging, most enjoyable game I've ever called was the 5 overtime victory over Louisville. There's just no question as far as being a participant. And that's probably my favorite game. The other one that's up there, and I was doing pre and post game radio and TV shows, but in the 80s, we did on WNDU all of the games that the networks didn't pick up. And by then, the networks were CBS and ABC. There was no NBC. South Bend had a lower than 50% cable penetration. So even if the game was on ESPN, we did it locally. But one of the most memorable games has got to be the 88 Notre Dame victory over Miami, the Catholics versus convicts game. Mm-hmm. And knew everybody. And Bubba Cunningham, I'll never forget this, is the athletic director at North Carolina. He's a Notre Dame grad. He was on the staff at the time. And we still had our little TV booth up in the old press box. And myself and a guy named Chuck Freeby and the late Jeff Jeffers were all up there. And we were going nuts. Because there's no cheering in the press box. And that continues to this day for the press part of the press box. But we were just screaming at Miami. And I remember Bubba stuck his head in and went, we stopped for a second, looked at him. He goes, "You guys are crazy. You're insane." But a lot of that led from Jimmy Johnson's coaching and Jerry Faust's last game after Jerry had resigned, ran up the score. Now, I'm a firm believer. Jimmy did nothing wrong. I mean, in sports, you can call off the dogs or not. That wasn't Miami's persona. And if you want somebody to stop scoring on you, stop them. If you can't stop them, don't blame them. But there were some hard feelings there. And, it was a desire to see Notre Dame get back into the national championship hunt. And then there was still that, I call it coincidence, they would call it tradition, that in the third year of all the coaches, you won a national championship, and that was Lou's third year. So a lot of things were coming together. That was a very thrilling game to be at and be a part of.
Yeah, my dad was at that game, and he had got the shirts at that game. So like he said, that was obviously one of his favorite games he's ever been to.
The Florida State game was great too in '93, except the prologue the next week against BC ruined it.
Mm-hmm.
But that was certainly a remarkable day, and this has nothing to do with sports, but that was the day. I was trained to do news, and they threw me on the newscast that morning. We had just started that year the Saturday morning newscast, and it ended up being 5 hours. And they threw the scripts away, and we had 6 live shots: helicopter, a golf cart, satellite truck, and I think 3 live trucks. And we're just tossing it around doing the news. They liked it, and I ended up doing a lot of news the next 13 years after that. So that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
So now on to your patented segment. We're not going to call it fast break, but what we call it is the speed round, to not take anything away from you. So first, what was your favorite game from this year?
From this year, from the basketball season this year?
Mm-hmm.
They're darn. I'm trying to think of the one that I liked the best. It was probably, this shouldn't be this hard. Yeah, Carolina and Boston College, but Carolina here, beating Carolina at the buzzer, it doesn't get a whole lot better than that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll tell you what, winning at Syracuse and John Mooney screaming at the crowd that I own this place, that was pretty cool too. Anytime you win at Syracuse, that's good. I mean, I shouldn't have been caught off guard, but we were talking about such big picture. I had to refocus on this year.
So what's your favorite opposing stadium to go call a game at?
Basketball-wise, it's got to be Cameron when you win in particular. There is nothing – it is everything that it is made out to be. The people are insane. It's tiny. It's small. On the road, from an atmosphere perspective, Cameron's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely not as fun when you lose by 24 like this year, but normally.
No, and unfortunately that happens to lots of people there.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I mean, I've always liked going to the Carrier Dome. And at one point, I think Notre Dame was 6-0 there when Digger was here. So that's always been enjoyable to make Jim Boeheim look sad. So probably those would be the top 2 road venues throughout the career. Cameron's tough because you usually lose. But when Notre Dame won down there, and your buddy Rex Pfluger hit a huge 3 in that game, and Bonzi went nuts, that's certainly among the most satisfying road games for Notre Dame that I have ever called. My other favorite venue, I love calling games in the Maui Invitational because you're in Maui.
Yeah.
And we're going back.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, a couple of years, not this fall, but next fall, assuming that we get all this figured out.
Mm-hmm. Maybe another shirtless Mike Brey celebration in the.
I'm not sure they're going to let him do that again.
Let's just hope for another celebration period.
Loosest coach in America, no question.
Mm-hmm. So this one we might disagree on because of age. LeBron or Jordan?
No disrespect to LeBron, but it's Jordan, and not LeBron. Probably the superior athlete, but I don't think anybody's been able to will his team to win the way that Jordan did. But I mean, that's, do you want $1 million in cash or check? It's both pretty much the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So what's your favorite thing about Notre Dame? Could be any sports or non-sports or.
It's the kind of people that you get to work with. I won't name the school, but they were winning more than Notre Dame was at the time. And somebody said, well, don't you? And Notre Dame was really struggling in basketball. And so wouldn't you rather be with these guys? And I said, no, your guys scare me. I love the guys that I'm around. I can say this about virtually every athlete that I've been around here is Notre Dame grads. And then Notre Dame's not the only place. I don't want to come off one of those people that only Notre Dame can do this. But there's something about the place, and maybe it's the kind of people that fit here, but they go on to have such productive lives and not just athletically. They go on to make the communities where they live better places. It's just a quality group of coaches and faculty that you interact with, but the players are all just really good dudes, great ladies. They're just really good people, and you just feel proud to be around them. And that's why a lot of times it hurts when you lose, because you know how hard that they work. And they are indeed true student athletes, to the point where sometimes I think maybe they really push you academically here, but if you survive, nothing's going to be more difficult than what you've gone through here. So it would be, in a nutshell, if you gave me one word to answer, it would be people. The people.
So this is kind of a non-Notre Dame question. Who's the
Sure.
best college basketball player you've ever seen in person that didn't play for Notre Dame?
I've been doing this so long, that's a hard question. I saw Jordan. I saw Ralph Sampson. I saw Dominique Wilkins play for Georgia in person. I saw Danny Manning. Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson was the most athletically gifted player I think I've ever seen. For a man of his size, the things that he can do. Now, his legacy is still out there because he was only in college once, but I don't think I've ever seen an athlete quite like Zion Williamson. I mean, just a remarkable player. But there have been so many great collegiate players over the year that I have had the honor of seeing. I saw Kareem. I mean, it's just, in Bill Walton. So Oscar Robertson, what a terrific player he was.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, to narrow it down, that's like handing me a box of donuts and asking me which one's my favorite one. It all depends the one I'm with at the time. But I do think, in terms of the most impressive athlete, it would have to be, at this point, just off the top of my head, Zion Williamson. And the greatest player, boy, there's so Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. It's really too. It's not that I want to jump out on a limb. Greatest athlete, probably, in terms of what he could do with the basketball, would be Zion. Greatest player, there's a lot of 1s and 1As there. The guys that I just mentioned, all pretty spectacular.
Mm-hmm. So this one you kind of already answered, but were you more excited for Nate's game winner versus Toledo, or game tire versus Toledo, or the game winner against UNC?
Well, at the time, I was more excited about Toledo because there's more, but I didn't know that UNC was coming up. So I am more excited about the one with UNC because there's so much on the line, the tradition, and also the way the play evolved, and Pfluger having to get the rebound and throwing the perfect pass, whereas the one against Toledo is an inbounds play, which was surprising. So it would be Carolina, but buzzer beaters, I'm going to break some corpuscles on any buzzer beater. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm. And the last one, which other broadcasters that are still broadcasting do you really like to listen to?
Boy, there's a lot of good ones out there. Adam Amin, who grew up in Valparaiso and makes me feel old. He once said that he grew up listening to me. I think that he's outstanding. Sean McDonough is outstanding. Dan Schulman may be the number one play-by-play guy in multi-sports around. Al Michaels, obviously, is still a legend. I'm sticking with the play-by-play guys right now. Jim Nantz has this style that works for virtually any sport that he does. He always seems to catch the mood correctly without ever overshadowing the game itself. I like to listen. If I want to get energy, Gus Johnson does a good job of that, and I think he's made it okay for national announcers to get excited. And I think when you're talking about sports, that you should be allowed to get excited. And whenever there's a list like this off the top of your head, you're always forgetting. You're always worried you're going to forget somebody. But from a play-by-play perspective, I think those guys I mentioned right now would all be in the club of folks that I really enjoy listening to.
So that's all the questions we have. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And
hey, it's my pleasure. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Joey, you did a heck of a job with your background. I mean, this is my actual bookcase, which I had to kind of like that. The banner here is not normally there, but we have Zoom calls now, and I've been hosting shows in here, so I had to rearrange a few of the things, and some of it's just debris. Below this deck, there's just files and papers everywhere. It's in the front of the house. My wife is still mad at me for it. So, and right behind me, that is a montage of Notre Dame beating Kentucky when they finally got Kentucky to come back in the NIT. And actually, it was a fundraiser, which I emceed, and I kidded with one of the patrons that, hey, you outbid me for the collage, and Mike Bennett, the legendary Notre Dame sports photographer who just passed away tragically from cancer, said, well, I can always make another one, Jack. And Coach's spouse said, yeah, Jack, you can buy one too. So I was kind of forced into spending a little bit more money than I expected, but it's been the centerpiece of my office for quite some time. And the one thing I talked about, great players right there, that is the 50th anniversary or the 100th reunion basketball signed by some of the great players. I didn't see him in person, Austin Carr. And I do have to say, LaFonso Ellis was a pretty darn good player as well. And I don't want him finding out I didn't mention him. But you said not Notre Dame, so that's how I got away with that.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up Twitter trolls too. Now that you've come on, we're your personal Twitter defenders. We got you.
Well, I work with students at times, and I would just like people to, none of us, if you're in the public eye, you deserve to be criticized. I used to do a sports talk show where we would argue with the listeners. And we had a general manager say, we can't argue with them. I said, well, they can't say stupid stuff. And if you don't want it, you don't want controversy, because we were also on TV and he felt they were clients, they get rid of the shows, and they finally got rid of the show because they didn't want us arguing with the fans. A rule I would leave for you guys, and I can tell you're all class guys and you wouldn't do it. Never say anything online about anyone or to anyone that you wouldn't say to their face. And I think if you live your life that way, you're never going to say anything that you deeply regret. And it's only fair. There's never, no broadcaster goes out there to make people not want to enjoy the broadcast. No player goes out there, as I said earlier, intending to lose. But the internet has basically given the drunk guy or gal at the end of the bar a platform. And when you see writing on a screen, it just comes with a legitimacy that you probably wouldn't give it if it came out of their mouths and you saw them do it. And a lot of people just wouldn't say something because there is still something about courtesy and decorum that we've kind of lost that we need to get back. But I'll close with this, and I won't name the person who did it, but hosting the John McLeod show. And there was a Chicago sports talk host who I guess one day went on and on about how bad the show was. And boy, if you can't sleep, you want some Sominex, watch that John McLeod show hosted by Jack Nolan. You just turn it on and you'll be, man, it's so, on and on and on. So I go up there to do a story, and the interview is at Michael Jordan's restaurant. And lo and behold, the sportscaster is hosting his radio show there. So I walked up to him and I said, hey, and if I say his name, he'll know who it was. And I don't want to embarrass him, but he's a bit of a blowhard, but that's how he's made his money. Nothing wrong with that. Love sports. Said, hey, I'm Jack Nolan. Hey, nice to meet you. Yes, I'm sportscaster South Bend. I'm the guy that hosts that John McLeod show you like so much. Sorry, guys. I didn't mean that. It's just a stick. Just a stick. I really didn't mean. This is what we got to do to get the listeners involved. The guy turned 3 shades of white because. So if you're on the radio, and sometimes you're going to be in a situation and you have to make that decision. But generally in life, don't say things about people you wouldn't say to the face, and things will go well. And I will say this: you have to choose what you want to be. If you want to be a sportscaster who's a critic, who's a sports talk host, who's controversial, and tell you what, there are probably people who make a lot more money hosting shows than they do calling games. And unless you get to the upper echelon, personality is something that earns a lot of money. You can make that call. But I do know some folks who, in local broadcasting, who started taking shots at the local institution. And then when it came time to maybe make a move to that institution, they don't get to do it because they've upset so many people at the institution. Now, I'm not saying don't tell the truth. I'm not saying don't suck up. But when you start to rip people saying Coach so-and-so is an idiot or the AD has to step up, understand that if your career path is involved in getting more involved with that program, it's probably not going to happen. I'm not saying what you're saying isn't true, and I'm not saying don't tell the truth, but there are ways you can say things. You can criticize a program legitimately and with class, or you can rip people. And if you rip people, some doors may close, and you just have to be aware of that as you decide to do it. But especially on Twitter, no one's ever going to remember the shots you didn't take. So make sure if you're going to take a shot that you want to take.
It's good advice. Thank you for that.
Thanks, guys. I love that background again.
Mm-hmm.
Joey, you did good with that background.
Thank you. We got to get you up there soon.
I don't have talent pictures. I can send you one of my baseball cards, but they're only this big. You'd have to blow it up.
Well,
Guys, thanks. This has been fun.
Thank you for coming on.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Campus, all right?
All right. Hopefully
Thank
we'll meet you sometime. Thank you.
Please do. Thank you.